At the family dinner, my mom kicked me out, then gave my sister the house. 3 years later, my sister drove by my place and froze. She called Mom, shouting. What Mom did. After that, I never saw coming. I'm Whitney, and I just turned 28 last month. 4 years ago, at our family's Thanksgiving dinner, my mom slammed her wine glass down so hard it cracked, looked me dead in the eye, and called me worthless. Right there at the table, in front of everyone. Then she kicked me out on the spot and announced she was giving our entire family estate, worth close to $600,000, to my older brother Maxwell as a wedding gift. At least one of my children knows how to make something of themselves, she said, sliding the property deed across the table while my aunts and uncles actually applauded. I sat there stunned, my fork frozen halfway to my mouth, before I grabbed my purse and walked out into the cold November night. I drove straight to my Aunt Caroline's house in the neighboring town, my hands shaking on the wheel. She'd always seemed kinder than my mom, more understanding. I knocked on her door at nearly midnight, my breath forming clouds in the freezing air, and begged her to let me crash on her couch for just one night. She opened the door, took one look at me, and her face went hard. You're a disappointment, Whitney. Always have been with those ridiculous pottery obsessions. Grow up and figure your life out somewhere else. Then she closed the door in my face. I stood there in the darkness, completely alone, before walking back to my car and just sitting there, crying until my eyes burned. That night changed everything. I deleted every family member's number from my phone, blocked them all on social media, and disappeared from their lives completely. 4 years of absolute silence followed. No birthdays, no holidays, no contact whatsoever, until last Tuesday, when my brother Maxwell was driving through the historic district downtown and passed my new property. He stopped his car in the middle of the street, staring. Then he called our mom, and I could hear him shouting through the phone from where I stood in my studio. "Mom, you need to see this place. The property value alone has to be—" Wait, whose name is on the sign? Whitney? Our Whitney? No way. No freaking way. What my mom did next? I never saw it coming. But let me take you back to the beginning, to show you exactly how I went from being the family failure to owning something that left them speechless. Growing up in Savannah, Georgia, our family lived in a historic Victorian mansion in the heart of the city, wrought iron gates, magnolia trees lining the driveway, the works. My mother, Patricia Montgomery, was a real estate developer who measured success purely in property values and investment portfolios. She threw charity galas, sat on nonprofit boards, and cared more about appearances than anything else. My brother Maxwell, 3 years older than me, was being groomed to take over the family business from the moment he showed interest in commercial real estate at age 12. Meanwhile, my passion for ceramics and pottery barely registered as a real skill to anyone in my family. The favoritism was baked into our childhood from the start. Maxwell got enrolled in real estate investment courses while still in middle school, while I spent my afternoons at the Community Arts Center, spinning clay on wheels and learning to fire kilns. My father, Benjamin Montgomery, was the only one who understood. He'd been an architect before transitioning into property development to please my mother, and he recognized that I was creating something meaningful. "You're building beauty with your hands," he'd tell me in his quiet workshop, where he kept his old drafting table and architectural sketches. "Don't let anyone diminish that." My mother saw things differently. When Maxwell turned 16, she threw him a massive birthday bash at our country club, 300 guests, a live band, and she presented him with a brand new Audi wrapped in a giant bow. The local newspaper even covered it. When I turned 16, Dad took me to a pottery supply warehouse and bought me professional-grade tools and a small kiln for our garage. "This will help you take your art to the next level," he said, his eyes warm with pride. I treasured those gifts more than anything, but the contrast stung. The pattern continued through high school. At 17, I won first place in the Georgia statewide arts competition, with a ceramic installation about environmental conservation, 60 pieces depicting endangered coastal wildlife. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a feature article about it, and Dad framed it in his office. My mother glanced at it once and said, "That's nice, honey," before turning back to discussing Maxwell's acceptance into the University of Georgia's prestigious real estate program. My Aunt Caroline, who visited that weekend, actually laughed. "Art is lovely as a hobby, Whitney, but Maxwell's the one with the real future. Business is what matters." Dad pushed back against their dismissals constantly. He took me to art galleries in Atlanta, drove me to pottery workshops in Asheville, and stayed up late helping me research ceramic artists for school projects. "You have a gift," he'd say, examining my latest sculptural piece. "Don't ever stop creating, no matter what they say." His support was everything, the only thing keeping me grounded as my mother and brother bonded over property listings and investment strategies. By the time I graduated high school, the divide was absolute. Maxwell had internships lined up at major development firms. I had been accepted to the Savannah College of Art and Design for their renowned ceramics program, but with only a partial scholarship. To cover the rest, I took a job at a coffee shop, pulling early morning shifts before classes. My days became a blur of throwing pots, glazing, firing, and serving lattes to tourists, barely sleeping, surviving on granola bars and determination. Then tragedy struck the summer after my first year of college. Dad was driving home from a client presentation when a drunk driver ran a stop sign and killed him instantly. I was 19, completely shattered. His last words to me kept replaying. "Stay true to your art, Whitney. Don't compromise yourself for their version of success." His death left me with no family ally, just my mother and Maxwell growing closer while I grieved alone. Aunt Caroline called to offer condolences, but spent most of the conversation praising Maxwell's new internship. With Dad gone, I threw myself into my ceramics work like a lifeline. At SCAD, I found Professor Victoria Hartwell, a renowned ceramic artist who saw something in my environmental-themed pieces. She invited me to work in her private studio off campus, where I developed a series exploring ocean pollution through sculptural vessels. "You're combining technical skill with meaningful commentary," she said, examining my work under the studio lights. "That's rare." Victoria became my mentor, introducing me to gallery owners and helping me refine my artistic voice. My mother, meanwhile, poured everything into Maxwell. She paid his full tuition at UGA, bought him a condo near campus, and gave him a monthly allowance for networking dinners and professional clothes. "Maxwell needs to focus on building his career," she'd say, whenever I asked for help with my student loans. I was eating instant ramen and working double shifts at the coffee shop, while Maxwell posted Instagram photos from business conferences in Miami and Chicago. During my junior year, I entered a piece called Drowning in Progress, a large-scale ceramic installation of sea creatures tangled in commercial fishing nets, into the Southeast Contemporary Art Exhibition. It won the Emerging Artist Award and was featured in Art in America magazine. I sent my mother a copy of the article. She texted back, "Glad you're keeping busy." That was it. Aunt Caroline called that week to tell me Maxwell had just closed his first real estate deal. "Now that's something to celebrate," she said. After graduation, our paths couldn't have been more different. I graduated with a BFA in ceramics and immediately struggled to find my footing. I took an unpaid apprenticeship at Riverstone Pottery, a small studio collective in Charleston, spending 12-hour days mixing glazes, loading kilns, and creating commissioned pieces for a pittance. I moved into a tiny studio apartment in a rough part of town, peeling linoleum, a bathroom the size of a closet, sirens every night. But it was mine, and I had space for a small pottery wheel. My mother called once during this period. "Why don't you get your master's in business administration?" she asked. "You could work in arts management or something practical. Maxwell just got promoted to junior partner at Montgomery Development Group." I could hear the disappointment in her voice, the unspoken comparison hanging between us. Aunt Caroline was more direct when she stopped by unannounced one day, taking one look at my cramped apartment and saying, "This is what your art degree got you? Maxwell owns a townhouse downtown. The breaking point came at Maxwell's engagement party to Savannah Blake, a corporate lawyer from a prominent Charleston family. My mother hosted it at our family estate, white tents on the lawn, champagne towers, a string quartet, and I showed up late from the pottery studio, clay still under my fingernails despite scrubbing. I was getting a glass of water in the kitchen when I overheard my mother talking to guests in the adjacent dining room. Her voice carried clearly. Whitney's been a disappointment her entire life, chasing this pottery fantasy. Maxwell deserves the estate. It's worth $600,000, and he's actually accomplished something worth celebrating. My heart stopped. I stood frozen by the kitchen sink as my mother made the announcement to the entire party. Guests applauded. Maxwell grinned, raising his champagne glass. Savannah kissed his cheek. I set down my water glass and walked into the room. "You're giving Maxwell the entire estate?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "After everything?" My mother's expression hardened instantly. "After everything? Whitney, you've done nothing but waste your potential on a hobby that will never support you. Maxwell has built a real career. He deserves this property, and frankly, if you can't be happy for your brother, then you're not welcome in this house anymore." The room went silent. Maxwell smirked. Aunt Caroline, standing near the fireplace, nodded in agreement. I grabbed my jacket and purse and walked straight out to my car. I drove through the dark streets of Savannah, tears blurring my vision, until I pulled up to Aunt Caroline's house 40 minutes later. I knocked, my voice breaking as I asked if I could stay just one night on her couch. She stood in the doorway in her bathrobe, arms crossed. "You're a disappointment, Whitney," she said coldly. "You've always wasted your time on those ridiculous pottery obsessions. Maxwell is the one who deserves support. Figure your life out somewhere else." She shut the door. I heard the lock click. I sat in my car in her driveway for an hour, crying until I had no tears left. Then I made a decision. I drove back to my apartment, grabbed my phone, and systematically blocked my mother's number, Maxwell's number, Aunt Caroline's, and every other family member. I deleted them from social media, removed every photo, erased every connection. They wanted me gone? Fine, I'd disappear completely. The next morning, I woke up in my tiny apartment and made a choice. I would prove them wrong, but not for them, for myself. For Dad, whose belief in me still echoed. I contacted Professor Victoria and asked if she knew anyone looking for a ceramics instructor. She connected me with Magnolia Arts Center, a community studio that needed part-time teaching help. The pay was minimal, but it was a start. I also reached out to coastal environmental organizations, offering to create awareness pieces about ocean conservation. One contact led to another. The Georgia Coastal Coalition commissioned me to create an installation for their headquarters, a large ceramic mural depicting marine ecosystems threatened by pollution. It took me 3 months of 14-hour days, shaping and firing hundreds of individual tiles in the Riverstone studio. The piece was unveiled at their annual fundraiser, and photos spread through environmental circles online. A writer from Coastal Living magazine reached out for an interview. The feature ran 6 months after that terrible Thanksgiving. "Local artist combines ancient craft with modern conservation," read the headline, with photos of me in my studio surrounded by sea turtle sculptures and coral reef installations. The article mentioned that my work could be commissioned for private collections and educational institutions. My phone started ringing. Orders came in. Slowly, impossibly, things began to shift. The turning point came 18 months after I'd been exiled. A marine biology education center in Savannah saw the Coastal Living article and commissioned me to create an interactive ceramic installation for their new wing. 20 large-scale pieces depicting ocean life, designed to educate visitors about environmental conservation. The budget was $45,000, more money than I'd ever seen. I rented proper studio space, hired 2 assistants, and worked around the clock for 4 months. The installation's unveiling made regional news. The Savannah Morning News ran a front page feature with photos of children touching my ceramic sea turtle sculptures and reading the educational plaques I'd designed. Suddenly, I wasn't just a struggling artist, I was a recognized creator whose work served a purpose. Inquiries flooded in from museums, schools, and private collectors across Georgia and South Carolina. I met Cameron Walsh at that unveiling, a gallery owner from Charleston who specialized in contemporary functional art. He examined my work with intense focus, then asked if I'd be interested in a solo exhibition at his gallery. "Your pieces tell stories," he said. "That's rare in ceramics. People want art that means something." 3 months later, my first solo show opened to a sold-out crowd. I sold 32 pieces in one night, earning enough to move out of my terrible apartment and into a small cottage with a proper studio space. The success built momentum. I developed a signature style, large ceramic vessels embedded with oceanic textures and glazed in colors mimicking coral reefs and tidal pools. Each piece came with information about the specific ecosystem it represented. Environmental organizations started commissioning me regularly. I taught advanced workshops at Magnolia Arts Center. My waiting list for custom pieces grew to 6 months. By year 3, I incorporated as Tidewater Ceramics Studio and employed 4 full-time artists. We created everything from private commissions to large-scale public installations. A boutique hotel chain in Charleston commissioned me to create custom ceramic sinks and wall installations for their bathrooms, $200,000 for the project. I was featured in Southern Living, Garden and Gun, and American Craft magazine. My work appeared in galleries from Atlanta to Miami. The real validation came when the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History reached out. They wanted to commission a permanent installation for their Ocean Conservation Wing, a massive ceramic reef wall that visitors could walk through, learning about endangered species. The budget was $180,000, and it would take me 8 months. I signed the contract in disbelief, thinking of Dad and wishing he could see this moment. Through it all, I maintained my silence with my family. I never reached out, never checked their social media, never tried to contact them. My college friend Taylor Monroe would occasionally mention seeing them around Savannah, Maxwell's new development projects, my mother at charity events, but I'd changed the subject. That part of my life was closed. Then I found the property. A historic warehouse in Savannah's Arts District was being sold, 30,500 square feet with 18-foot ceilings, original brick walls, and huge industrial windows. It was perfect for both a gallery and a working studio. The price was $425,000. I'd saved enough for a significant down payment, and my accountant assured me the business revenue could handle the mortgage. I bought it outright. The renovation took 6 months. I kept the warehouse's industrial character but added modern touches: polished concrete floors, track lighting, a climate-controlled firing room for the kilns, and a street-facing gallery space with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing my work. I installed a massive ceramic installation in the front window, a 10-foot-tall wave made of hundreds of individual glazed pieces, illuminated from behind. The property value in the Arts District had skyrocketed, and my accountant estimated the building was now worth close to $650,000. I hung a simple sign outside: Tidewater Ceramics Studio and Gallery. No grand opening, no announcement. I just quietly moved my operation in and continued working. The gallery attracted steady foot traffic, and my commissioned projects kept the business thriving. I'd built exactly what I wanted: a sustainable creative practice that supported itself and employed talented artists. Last Tuesday afternoon, I was in the back studio glazing a series of coral installations when I heard a car screech to a stop outside. Through the window, I saw my brother Maxwell sitting in his Mercedes, staring at my building with his mouth open. He fumbled for his phone, and I could hear his voice rising even through the walls. "Mom, you need to see this right now. Whitney has..." I don't even know how to describe it. A whole building in the arts district. The property alone has to be worth. Wait, let me check the sign. Tidewater Ceramics? That's her studio? Mom, our Whitney owns this? I set down my glaze brush and walked to the window, watching him gesture frantically while talking on the phone. He didn't see me. After 10 minutes, he drove away. I went back to work, but my hands were shaking slightly. 4 years of silence, broken just like that. The next morning, I arrived at the studio to find my mother's Lexus parked outside. She was standing on the sidewalk, staring at the building, looking older than I remembered. More gray in her hair, deeper lines around her mouth. She turned as I approached, and her expression was complex. Surprise, regret, something else I couldn't quite read. "Whitney," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I had no idea I didn't realize you'd accomplished so much. This building, your work in the Smithsonian, Maxwell showed me the articles online last night. I was wrong to dismiss you the way I did. I was wrong about everything." I unlocked the studio door, letting it swing open but not inviting her in. "You called me worthless," I said quietly. "You gave Maxwell everything and kicked me out without a second thought. You chose to cut me off, not the other way around." She stepped closer, her eyes searching my face. "I know. I made a terrible mistake, and I want to make it right. Your father would be so proud of you. I see that now. Can we try to rebuild something? I'm your mother, Whitney. We're family." I stood there in the doorway of my studio, surrounded by the evidence of 4 years of relentless work, looking at the woman who'd shattered me and sent me into exile. And I realized something. I didn't need her validation anymore. "No," I said simply. "We can't rebuild something that was never there to begin with. You didn't support me when it mattered. You actively worked to tear me down. And when I needed help, when I literally had nowhere to sleep, you and Aunt Caroline slammed the door in my face." My mother flinched. "I know, and I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry. But I'm here now, trying to make amends. Doesn't that count for something?" "It's 4 years too late," I replied. "I built all of this without you, without any of you. And honestly, I'm better for it. You taught me that the only person's approval I need is my own." I stepped inside the studio. "I have work to do. Goodbye, Patricia." I closed the door before she could respond and locked it. Through the window, I watched her stand there for several minutes before finally walking back to her car and driving away. My hands were steady now. That evening, Aunt Caroline texted me for the first time in years. "Heard about your little pottery shop? Still playing artist while Maxwell manages millions in real estate? Some things never change." I read it once, blocked her number, and deleted the message. Their opinions had lost all power over me. The following weeks brought more attempted contact. Maxwell showed up at the studio twice, both times asking to talk. I had my assistant tell him I was unavailable. My mother sent flowers with a card reading, "Proud of you, Mom." I donated the flowers to a hospital. They wanted access to my success now that it was visible and valuable, but they'd forfeited that right when they discarded me. Through Taylor, I learned that my mother's reputation had taken a hit. Word had spread through Savannah's tight social circles about how she'd treated me. The favoritism, the cruelty, kicking out her own daughter. Women at her charity board started declining her calls. The country club whispered. Her carefully constructed social status was cracking. Maxwell's life had taken hits too. His real estate firm had overextended during a market downturn, and he'd lost significant investments. His marriage to Savannah was strained. Taylor heard they were in counseling. The golden child wasn't shining quite so bright anymore. Meanwhile, I signed a contract for a second Smithsonian installation and was featured in a PBS documentary about contemporary artists working in traditional mediums. I furnished my private office in the studio with care. One of Dad's old architectural sketches framed on the wall, photos from my solo exhibitions, and a shelf holding my favorite ceramic pieces I'd never sell. Every morning, I walked through the gallery space, past the artwork that represented years of persistence and belief in myself, and felt profound gratitude. Not for them, but for the path their rejection had forced me to walk. Standing in my studio one evening, watching the sunset light up the massive wave installation in the window, I understood something fundamental. Their acknowledgement wasn't the victory. Building a life that fulfilled me, creating art that mattered, surrounding myself with people who valued my work, that was the victory. They could keep their regrets and their belated pride. I had everything I needed, and I'd earned every single piece of it myself.